Okay. Members can remind you that the meeting will be recorded and ask to note that mobile phones should be switched off as they interfere with the recording. Tablet devices should be switched to mute. And arrange members to declare their interest as appropriate throughout the meeting. And can I declare the meeting open?
Can you do that with me?
Public.
It's time, okay. Save time.
I have some apologies. We have an apology from Joanne Dapson, from Kieran McCarthy and Tom Elliott. With any other apologies? No, at this moment. Remind members that the consultation stage of the Reservoirs Bill is scheduled for Tuesday 28th of April 2015. Based on this, the clerk has done some preliminary work and details of this are outlined in the table memo. I will go to do that now, Stella, yeah?
Yeah.
And I'll tell her to take us through the memo and there will be an opportunity for some questions after that.
Okay, members,
Stella?
this is your
table
memo here for you if you want to have a look at it. So this is just some useful information for you, but it's really only preliminary information at this point, and it is subject to change. And we won't know the deadline, we won't know the final position until the deadline for tabling amendments is passed on Thursday the 23rd at 9:30. And I will get an updated note to you on Monday the 27th, if not Friday the 24th. But at the minute as we stand, there are likely, and I use that word likely, okay, to be 5 groups of amendments and therefore 5 debates. The committee has agreed all the amendments that the Minister is bringing in groups 1 to 4. In fact, all the ministerial amendments in groups 1 to 4 have been brought at the behest of the committee. Okay, there's no disagreements there. So the committee position, which is in its 2 committee reports, they will be reflected by the chairperson during the debate. The chairperson will actually state the committee position as is in the 2 committee reports. Okay, and the Group 5 amendments then are ministerial amendments that have been brought after the committee finished its consideration of the bill. So the Group 5 amendments are amendments that the Minister is bringing that the committee has not taken a position on. Now, the committee were previously informed of these amendments, but it took no position on them, okay? And we'll cover those, a wee bit more on those later. These amendments deal with what's called sensitive information and some of the technical amendments as well. As of just before lunchtime today when I checked, there were no private members' amendments tabled, but members have until 9:30 on Thursday to do so, so I won't be able to finalise that position with you until 9:30 on Thursday. There are 2 committee reports on the bill. Members have previously received copies of them. There's the main report and there's the addendum. Both of those are on the website, and that memo has the link to the website there for you. We have spare copies of the addendum left over, which I have given out, but we have no spare copies of the reservoir bill. I think one of the members got our last spare copy yesterday. Okay, but you'll get those on the website, the committee website, and I'll send the links to you as well. Okay, but the most up-to-date, if members are writing speeches, they should note that the most up-to-date information on the number of reservoirs, the ownership and the provisional consequence designation is in the addendum. It's in the addendum, so there's figures in the reservoir bill about 151 reservoirs, but that was changed, as you know, to 137. So the most up-to-date figures are in that report there, if you're looking at it. For writing speeches. Now, if there's no amendments on an issue or a clause, then there will be no debate. And there's a number of issues that the committee covered during its evidence taking, but there's no amendments on those, so there'll be no debate. But the Chair will briefly mention them in his opening speech, and that is issues around the grant aid, the reservoir panel system, the decommissioning, the definition of or minimum size of reservoir, the removal of low-risk reservoirs from the requirements of the bill, and planning issues. Okay, so that's all on page 2 of the memo there for you. There'll be no debate on those, but the Chair will briefly mention the work the committee did on those in his opening speech. So the 5 provisional groups, and these are provisional at the minute and subject to change. The Speaker hasn't agreed these, so that's caveated so strongly. There's no other caveat I can put on that there. Group 1, risk designation. 99 amendments in that group alone. That's the one that's going to take up considerable time, just physically reading the amendments into the report. The main points of the committee position in these are found in paragraphs 47 to 61 of the committee report, the main committee report. Okay, so for that group, go to paragraphs 47 to 61. Group 2, cost recovery and appeals. Okay, committee position on this is in the report as well, paragraphs 40 to 43 and 27 to 39. And the chairperson will also mention paragraph 86 of the committee report as well, and paragraph 18 in the addendum to the committee report. So that's where the information on that is. Group 3, frequency of visits by supervising engineer. This is a slightly complex area, members, because there's one position in the committee report, and then, as you remember, you amended that position, and that's why the addendum to the report was published. So for the issue on frequency of visits by supervising engineer, you should really refer to the addendum, okay, and as I've said there, and you will, the entirety of the addendum and paragraph 68 to 74 of the original report and all of the addendum. Group 4 is phase commencement and audit, and this is where we had the major win for the committee. So while there is no reference to audit and the audit that the committee are getting in the report, in the bill report itself, the phase commitment is dependent on it. So the chairperson will reflect paragraph 16 to 26 in the main report and scatter paragraphs throughout the two reports. But that's the major issue. Phase commencement and audit is the major win. Group 5, as I said, is the set of amendments on sensitive information and technical amendments. These are amendments that the committee has seen but not taken any position on it. And there is there's a page overleaf, the very final page, which is an update from Rivers Agency on what those amendments are about. And we'll have to leave those up to everybody individually to decide how they wish to vote on those ones. But all the other ministerial amendments, the shortcut to it all is all the other ministerial amendments have been agreed by this committee. Considerable work went into getting that agreement, as you know, yep. Long and drawn out work, but they've been agreed by the committee. Okay. I would like to suggest that if necessary, and depending on whether there are other amendments put down by members, that we might look to do a quick informal meeting of this committee on Monday.
Yeah.
Okay, if necessary, we'll make that call.
Just for half an hour, maybe.
Yeah, make that call on the time. Can't plan for it, we'll wait and see what happens, we'll make the call. If necessary as well, and if you want to speak to me individually.
A time that could be arranged on Monday at some stage.
A time that can be arranged, and we'll have to wait and see.
This is sort of an informal. Yeah. We're not sure when we need it yet or not.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And
also, I think, if necessary, and this is all provisional, it's all ifs and buts. If necessary, we could potentially bring in River Agency officials to quickly chat you through any amendments if you need to. But when I spoke to Rivers Agency officials, they said that they really need to brief their minister first, and then to get a ministerial position, and then they'll be able to brief the committee members after. Okay? If necessary as well, and you can speak to me individually on this afterwards, if you want any of your party staff to speak to Rivers Agency people, I am happy they're happy to do so, and I can give you their telephone numbers if necessary. Okay, so there's that provision there as well. Okay, so the only other thing I wanted to mention to you are that we have between over 230 amendments so far. Staff, the ministerial amendments have been tabled today. We'll be going through those. I expect it to be exactly as they were presented to the committee. I don't expect there to be a single comma out of place, but the staff will check that. We'll make sure that what's tabled has been what the committee agreed, okay? But I have no expectation that there'll be even a comma out of place on that. It's just that sheer weight of amendments that is going to take time in plenary. My informal understanding again is that the Business Committee met today and said they would prefer this done on Tuesday, not for it not to go into the Wednesday. So there's 4 groups. The chair's speeches will be long because he has to reflect all aspects of the committee position. But one or two members have suggested to me, so I would put this out here for you to consider, that you might want to look at dividing, so that not every member needs to speak to every group, that you might want to look at dividing those up between you in order to try and shortcut the process as much as possible. But that's up to yourselves to decide whether you want to do that.
Yeah, rather than every member. If you're three from one party, there's not much point in the whole three speaking in one minute. That's up to yourselves, but I mean, that's a decision in each party. Or members of the committee.
So we'll be looking for two, maximum, as well as the chair, a maximum of 2/3 members speaking to each of those four groups and no more. You might find that's too many, you know. So I don't know if you want to decide that between you, or you want me to send out a wee table and you can put your name down for which group you want to be at. I can do that by email.
That'd be a good idea, I think.
I send out a wee table and you
It may help some people. I have some members mentioned to me.
Personally. I think, Chair, the way the clerk has outlined possible structure, presentation on the day is important, because we don't want people repeating the same stuff over.
There's absolutely no benefit in that, I think.
No, and I mean, again, because so far, you know, now that we've got agreement on the frequency of visits by supervising engineers, now that the committee got the audit in place, you know, there is agreement on. So I think, and I spoke to most of the committee members yesterday as well, so we know that there's agreement there. So it should theoretically, touch wood, go smoothly. And as I said, we don't know what other amendments will come in from private members, but that's where we are.
For what it's worth, Chairman, I would be happy enough to take the Group 1 unrestricted designation if you want.
Okay.
Okay. Between now and Monday, other members can.
Yeah, but now on Monday, if other members want to let me know what they want to speak to, would that do?
Got a list of them.
What are the four again?
They are, see your table papers there? They're listed in that. I've given you a memo. They're listed in that.
Yeah.
I will update this when I can, as soon as I can after 9:30 on Thursday. Okay? And if necessary, we can call an informal meeting on Monday to discuss any further amendments. And again, if you need me to get you contact numbers in Rivers Agency, if you're policy people, for example, you need to speak to Rivers Agency on, say, those Group 5 amendments, which the committee never took a position on, we're more than happy, Rivers Agency officials are more than happy to do that.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can go around everybody individually. Is there any other questions or comments on any of that?
Tell me group, the amendments.
They are great. Well, what we think is that what I've been told informally and off the well, I know it's in public session, but off the record, is that the Bill Office have looked at grouping the amendments, and they've got 5 groups at the minute. 4 of those groups are the amendments that the committee have agreed. So those are groups 1 to 4 there that I've outlined for you. And I've also outlined where you'll find the relevant information if you need to be writing speeches, okay, in the committee reports.
Okay.
So you probably want to refer 3 reference documents, the 2 committee reports, the actual committee report, the addendum to the committee report, which is highly unusual that we had to actually have that. That shows you how difficult it was to get agreement on some of these issues, and the bill paper, it's the bill itself.
And again, members, the clerk, if we feel there's a meeting needed on Monday for half an hour, even, we'll contact everyone.
I think that'll be very wise.
Okay. I think we might have provisionally booked a room, but we might need to go to some of the parties of, to borrow a room, because sometimes it's difficult to get a room on Mondays, okay?
If you're thinking Monday morning, can you let us know? We need to leave.
I'll let you know as soon as I can on Monday, yeah.
Okay.
Good.
It's also important, members, on Tuesday that we do have a quorum in the Assembly itself. I mean, and as many members as possible need to attend, because if a scenario arose where we got halfway through this bill, halfway through, and then I hadn't a quorum, we had to start all over again someday, so that wouldn't.
Collapse was
Yeah.
Yeah, we need a quorum of 10,
What time's
minimum of 10.
What time set aside for it?
10 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock in the afternoon, with the break for question time.
Well, if all goes according to plan, I think just won't take as
10
long
o'clock in the
as that.
evening, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's wishful thinking on my behalf.
Can't see a problem.
Okay? Everyone clear? Okay.
I mean, I think hopefully the work that you've done in committee, and nobody can underestimate the amount of work this committee did on this, will pay dividends at consideration stage. That's what we're hoping, you know, so,
Okay.
okay.
Move on to agenda item 3, minutes of the meeting of 14th April 2015. Can I refer members to the draft minutes of the meeting held on the 14th April 2015 at pages 6 to 10. Are members content that the draft minutes are accurate? Members, if so, I will sign.
Chairman,
Sorry.
there's an issue. Can I just mention something? You know, Chairman, that there was this very disturbing programme.
You want to leave it on the old business at the
I'm
end?
happy enough to do it.
Is that all right?
Yes, I think
I think
it's
it's not an issue I'll raise to.
okay.
Is that okay? Okay. Agenda item 4, matters arising. Can I refer members to matters arising at pages 14 to 24. I draw members' attention to the item of correspondence from the UFU at pages 18 to 19, across compliance. The UFU have stated that they feel that the issue has not been dealt with properly by the department and that Northern Ireland is at a distinct disadvantage to other regions. Do you members feel it would be appropriate to seek a briefing from the UFU on this issue?
Yes.
I think it would be good, yeah. Members agreed?
Great.
Very good. Are members content to action the rest of matters arising as suggested on the index sheet at pages 12 to 13? Okay, members?
Yeah.
Agenda item 5, oral briefing from DARD on the fisheries bill. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 26 and 27 and papers from the department at pages 28 to 97. Can I welcome, forgive me, I'm hoarse, okay, so forgive me for that, but I've been trying to drink water here to help it. But can I welcome John Therington, Principal Officer, Kenny Parker, Deputy Principal, Paddy Campbell, Deputy Principal, and Mark McGahan, Chief Fisheries Officer. Can I ask you to take up to 10 minutes for your briefing, and then the committee will ask some questions. Okay, very well.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity. As Chairman, you've said, with Mark, the Chief Fisheries Officer, Paddy and Kenny representing the aquaculture policy and the sea fisheries policy, respectively, and myself on the bill team. Sea fishing for the main commercially exploited species is regulated through the Common Fisheries Policy and covers, for example, quotas and access regulations. The CFP is implemented and enforced here through subordinate legislation powers set out in acts that generally apply across the UK. The main act is the Sea Fish Conservation Act 1967, which has been updated on a number of occasions in the past, although the most recent update in 2009 applied only to Britain and not to here. And one of the aims of the proposals that we are here to discuss would be to align with some of those changes, given the joint enforcement we undertake across the Irish Sea. The 67 Act regulates the commercial use of fishing for and landing of sea fish and includes powers to regulate gear, nets and the licensing of fishing boats. As noted, it gives fisheries officers across here in Britain the power to enforce relevant EU regulations under the Common Fisheries Policy. While the EU regulates for most sea fishing activities, the 66 Fisheries Act regulates fish farming and sea fishing in the inshore area or the area adjacent to the coast. The 66th Act authorises the Department to make regulations for the management, conservation, protection and improvement of fisheries in our coastal waters. These powers can also be exercised for the conservation for the enhancement of the environment. The 66th Act also covers a licensing of aquaculture, making an offence to cultivate fish or shellfish without a licence, and provides legislative protection for the licensed operations. The legislation also sets out a process for consulting on licence applications and provides the Department with powers to grant licences subject to licence condition. The 66th Act also covers inland fishing and salmon fishing, both currently the responsibility of DECAL, which the Department is bringing forward separate changes at the same time as the changes that we have discussed today. A wide variety of commercially important fish species are exploited in our local waters. The licensed sea fishing sector is primarily concentrated at 3 East Coast fishing ports in County Down, where it supports employment in both catching and processing industries and ancillary industries. In 2013, the fleet comprised 145 licensed and registered vessels over 10 metres, as well in length, as well as 234 registered vessels under 10 metres in length, many of which operate from harbours away from the three main ports. Most of the fleet takes fishing opportunities in the Irish Sea, and most important fishery for our fleet in the Irish Sea is Dublin Bay prawns, followed by scallops, and then herring. In terms of agriculture, there are 79 fish farms on 90 sites, marine and land-based. They cultivate fish. 75% of the cultivation is shellfish, and 33% for the cultivation of fin fish. Current species include Atlantic salmon, brine trout, rainbow trout, mussels, and Pacific oysters. The sector directly employs around 77 full-time and 46 part-time employees. In addition to commercial sea fishing, there is also an active sea angling sector. Our waters are extremely diverse, offering a wide range of fishing opportunities for recreational sea angling. However, the number of people who participate in sea angling is unknown, as unlike freshwater angling, no permit is required and no records are kept. While sea angling occurs throughout the year, activity peaks in the summer months, and the most common type of sea angling is shore-based. The sea fishing regulatory framework that we have in place is generally associated with boat-based commercial fishing and not sea angling per se. The sea fishing sector has a long tradition here and has proven to be resilient in the face of challenge. However, a critical issue is uncertainty of supply of fish and other seafood. Stocks may be renewable, but they are finite, and the fish are at risk and there is a risk of overfishing. Without regulation of some sort, open access can result in overfishing. Individuals may not take account of the effect of their activity on the ability of others to catch fish, and this can have a detrimental effect on fish stocks for the future. The nature of sea fishing and the difficulty in regulating much of the activity as it takes place means that there is a requirement for a lot of regulatory and enforcement activity in order to deter wrongdoing. Robust legislation is required to ensure protection of vulnerable fish stocks, and the industry is generally keen on the retention of such strong enforcement powers as the only way to ensure that law-abiding fishermen and businesses can compete and to ensure the sustainability of stocks. As a result of changes in the offshore industry over the past decade, inshore fisheries have doubled in size and there have become much more prominent and valuable to fishing communities. That's the smaller boats that referred to earlier mainly. Some important nature conservation areas carry important designations as well, and as most inshore waters are in or near designated habitats, there's a need for adequate and strong legislation in order to protect these important designations. We briefed the committee last year on outline proposals for amendments to both the Acts I referred to earlier, the 66 Act and 67 Act. The proposal would seek to allow DAR to directly meet its EU obligations and commitments, and would aim to ensure we continue to provide adequate and proportionate protection for marine aquatic environments. The proposals would also amend the 1966 Act in relation to decal powers in order to introduce fixed penalty system for angling offences, and to make a number of other changes, mainly in relation to improving the passage of fish. A 12-week consultation began in August, and notification was sent to more than 1,800 individuals and organisations. Officials met agriculture representatives in the Fisheries Task Force. Meetings were also held with Ulster Wildlife and the Council for Nature Conservation in the countryside. In the end, 57 responses were received, covering a range of interests, although many concentrated mainly or exclusively on decal interests. You've been provided with a summary and analysis of the responses, along with a departmental draft response to these comments, as hopefully these demonstrate there was broad support for the majority of what DART has proposed. An exception to this was the decrease in the level of penalties for sea fisheries, with some respondents arguing the penalties were too steep. However, most suggested they were insufficient. The key issue for the agriculture industry was the proposals did not go far enough to deal with the complexity involved in agriculture licensing. This is not a unique issue to here, and to a large part is outside the scope of the Fisheries Bill. However, we are looking at the administrative processes involved with other departments and agencies involved, and this will likely include opportunities provided to us as a result of the departmental restructuring under the proposed Stormont House Agreement. Given the general support from stakeholders to the consultation, the proposed Fisheries Bill would broadly follow the DART consultation proposals. The final policy agreed with the Executive on 26th of March and is included in your papers. I am happy to briefly outline at this point, if it's the committee's wish, but they are detailed in your papers as say. In 2 minutes I'll go through them if you're happy enough that I do. Okay. The bill will modernise, update and consolidate DART enforcement powers. It will seek to improve the regulatory process and ensure adequate protection of marine environments by allowing amendments to sea fishery licences so that licence conditions can relate specifically to the marine environment, and will allow for the permitting of inshore fishing activities. In a technical amendment, it will also allow for the direct enforcement of all relevant EU legislation. The bill would increase the deterrent from wrongdoing by increasing maximum penalties available to the courts, and would introduce a system of fixed administrative penalties for inshore offences. The proposals would see a modernisation of the aquacultural licence system, replacing the 2 licences currently needed for marine fish farming with a new single aquaculture licence, and extend powers to cover aquatic organisms such as seaweed. New powers would regularize current administrative process such as transfer and surrender of licences, and also allow for charging for licence applications in the future. The proposals also include an extension of the power to revoke a fish farm as a result of not maintaining a range of related consents, not developing the site, or for other public good, all of which would remain subject to an existing appeals mechanism. As noted, the proposals also include changes to the 66 Act with respect to inland fisheries powers, for which DCAL is currently responsible. DCAL officials already engaged with the CAL Committee on their final proposals and the outcome of consultation, and while they'll be happy to answer any queries members have in the powers, no one was available to join us today. We are, of course, happy to take back any queries on your behalf. Following executive approval, we are now formally engaged with OLC and would hope for the bill being introduced to Assembly before the summer recess, with formal scrutiny to the committee thereafter. However, we recognise the competing pressures on OLC, including as a result of priority legislation emanating from the Stormont Agreement, could impact on OLC resources available to take forward the bill, but we remain hopeful of progress. We are happy to take any questions or comments you might have.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Can I take it to question 5 in the proposal? Change the maximum penalties under the Sea Fish Conservation Act 1967. As I read in Table 1 of the consultation document, says that current maximum penalty on summary conviction is 5,000 for a range of offences. The intent to raise this to 50,000 on a fine and 20,000 for obstruction of an officer. This is a tenfold increase. What do you say to justify this sort of increase?
The proposals in a number of places go from the maximum, with a statutory maximum of 5,000 to 50,000, including that particular offence. They are in line with the penalties that have been brought forward in the 1967 Sea Fish Conservation Act, which applies across these waters, and it would afford our fisheries officers with the same protection as those that they work alongside with on joint patrols, for example. And that's the aim. Obviously, Mark can give you examples of when there have been issues at sea, but it is a rare occurrence. But I think it's important to provide that deterrent from abusing or otherwise officers doing their duty, and if somebody does, that the penalty fits the crime.
For instance, in recent times, say in the last year, has anyone been fined the 5 grand, 5,000? Has it been used?
In the last year?
Well, it's not for the department to level the fine; it's for courts. And
yes, but has anyone?
It'd be unusual for us to get a fine as high as that, because there are usually good mitigation arguments deployed in court. In relation to the scale of the increase, I wouldn't want Northern Ireland to become the sort of soft touch of Western waters. Some fisheries offences carry enormous reward, and in my day I've seen fish seized in an offence at a value of 37,000 for the catch. So against that backdrop, a fine of 5,000 is incongruous. In addition, not necessarily dealing with people from Northern Ireland. We could be dealing with people from France or Belgium or elsewhere. And some of this enforcement is difficult enforcement. You're out there on your own at sea with probably many more people than you can put onto a vessel confronting you. So £20,000 for obstructing an officer, I think, is a necessity in this day and age. Anyway, I leave it with the committee. It seems to me to be a strengthening issue rather than the other way around.
You know that the committee had major difficulties with the last bill that came before us, because we did not feel the department had proven the need for the bill. What can you say to us now that will allay the fear of in this bill? Where, like, where's the need for it? I mean,
I think that, as Mark points out, it is important that we're not seen to be at a soft touch. The majority of the powers, in sea fishing powers, do simply align with powers that the officers have in the rest of these waters. The new enforcement powers particularly provide a range of clarifications and a range of, in fact, it seeks to provide a little bit of continuity where we would have exactly the same powers across these waters. And indeed, some of the powers would seek to reduce bureaucracy. I draw attention to a couple. One which would allow the department to sell fish seized at that point, rather than freezing them, so that if the court case comes to an end, they can be returned, or is the full value around the frozen value. So there are a number of things which seek to align, but actually, as well as providing the complete set of tools necessary to enforce, may improve the things that's used for fishermen as well.
okay. We have a Deputy Chair, Joe Byrne.
Yeah, Chair. In relation to fish farms, what's the outcome that we're get to in relation to management and compliance required by fish farm managers in the future? The bigger problem is the fish farm. How much of a benefit will this bill bring to the situation?
As we've said, it's a relatively small industry in the grand scheme of things, and a limited number of people involved in it. But the legislation was written in 1966 and has been tagged on a few times. So the main issue about developing a single licence, rather than a two-part licence, should reduce in some way the red tape involved in it. There are a number of issues around transfer that are perhaps unclear, or we have managed them administratively, but to give them a proper legislative sounding would, I think, would be the benefit of everybody. A key one, the extension of the licensing powers to include other aquatic organisms, for example seaweed, does provide a development opportunity for some fish farmers around our coast. So there are a number of opportunities within the powers as proposed.
Can I just add to that? I think one of the important things to realise is in the Fisheries Act going back to 1966 was there was no aquaculture in 1966. And the way the Act was written, at that time, the department, in fact I think it was the Ministry of Commerce, set up Navanaher Fish Farm on the Ban using an old mill race and mill site to experiment with the production of trout, to try to devise a mechanism for producing fish and thus an additional mechanism for agriculture. Since that time, or at the time the Act was devised, it had these two licences because it was foreseen that aquaculture, production of fish, would focus on native species. And the second licence, fish culture licence, the shellfish fishery licence or marine fish fishery licence, that gives the owner of the area where fish farming is to be carried out ownership of this native species. So there's an individual can't go onto the fish farm and say, that trout doesn't belong to you, it's not cultivated, it belongs to me, I'm fishing for it, or oysters, whatever it happened to be. Since then, we've gone through a complete evolution of aquaculture, and I brought with me a chart just to show the scale of it, because I think people don't really understand how much fish farming there is. But here's a picture of Benethlands Loch, and all the wee patches are areas that are leased from the Crown Estate and actively farmed for mussels. Arguably, there's not a lot of space left, but if we're talking about industry which has developed, this one in particular, there were no mussels farmed there until 1989. and now the place is full of claims for farms, and it's actively supporting a growing industry. As a consequence of this, and developments in the oyster sector, particularly responding to disease in France, it's left our waters, which are cooler and much less prone to disease, very popular with the French. We need an up-to-date modification of the Act to accommodate this industry, because if we don't, we're going to be the poor relative in Europe. So the modifications don't take away from any of the existing protections that are afforded by consultation and the Article 6 assessments prepared by the Habitats Directive. They simply streamline it.
Okay.
Chairman, I appreciate the answer. Is it envisaged, however, that there will be growth in this industry going forward with this extra regulation?
Firstly, Mark says that there's not an awful lot of room for expansion in terms of the sea, but there may be opportunity. There has been expansion on land and a lot of the technology for the on land systems, but the sea, it's fairly limited room for expansion. There's been an improvement in some places in terms of the output. Where the same amount of land seabed is producing more efficiently, but there are certainly limits on the potential to expand, particularly at sea.
Yeah, with wise governance, I mean, the amendments to the Act also allow us to revoke licences where licences aren't being used, and unfortunately we do have a number of licences that are brought forward by entrepreneurs, experimenters, Heath Robinsons, who succeeded in getting a licence maybe up to 20 years ago, and some of them are even deceased, and the licences still exist. So others haven't been developed at all. Others' investment was withdrawn, they didn't move ahead, and if we had these amendments, we'd be able to release that ground that's currently licensed to non-development. So there's opportunity there. The second area where there's opportunity is in technical developments. I don't think people would have realised back in the 1970s, how many oysters we'd be producing for the French market. So that there's potential there. There's also potential for individuals who are retiring out to lease or sell their consent to a younger developer. And my mobile phone is now full of French names because we have Frenchmen coming here to grow oysters because of the calamity brought about by a virus in France. So the sector continues to evolve and develop.
Thanks, John.
Okay, Edwin Poots.
Thank you. I hear what you're saying about the aquaculture side of it, but on the fishery side of it, we have down here is modernise, update and consolidate enforcement powers, amend sea fishery licences so that licence conditions can relate specifically to the marine environment as well as sea fish, and allow for direct enforcement of EU obligations, increase maximum penalties in order to increase the level of deterrent, introduce a system of fixed administrative penalties for inshore and aquaculture offences, and so it goes on. Strikes me of more of a fisheries enforcement bill than a fisheries bill. And I'm not sure well, you gentlemen are aware of it or not, but the fishing industry is on its knees. And this is our government's response to that we're going to have much more rigorous enforcement powers to be implemented against an industry that needs help. I don't see anywhere where there's about streamlining, about making enforcement more efficient, about making regulation more efficient. It's all about how we're going to further punish people who engage in the fishing industry and how we can punish them more easily if they have a modicum of fish over what they're supposed to have caught according to the EU rules.
I think it's firstly worth saying that it is primarily an enforcement legislation. The 66 Act and the 67 Act, that is what they are. That said, stakeholders, as I said in my introduction, are generally in support of strong regulation and have called for greater or better enforcement in order to protect the the sustainability of future generations from those that may go beyond the rules. The deterrent in itself is seen as a way of deterring people from wrongdoing, and therefore seek to protect fisheries. The fixed penalties referred
I
to.
hear what you're saying. I don't hear how you're helping the fishing industry.
Well, we would argue that this does, because it's important that you protect those that are fishing legitimately.
And how else do you help it aside from enforcement?
But outside,
How are you actually streamlining regulation through this bill? How are you making it easier to get licensing? Are you going to be reducing the cost by doing that streamlining? You know, this industry needs help, and all you're coming forward with is we're going to be more punitive on people in the industry.
the fisheries bill is what it does. It is about enforcement. However, there are other things the
It
department
can be more efficient enforcement, is what I'm saying.
Mark, you want to take on efficient enforcement, and you have other things to say?
Yeah.
Granted.
Enforcement's expensive. Putting a patrol boat to sea is expensive for a face-to-face. There are areas where technological developments are helping us, Mr. Poots. We've got a lot of satellite surveillance. We have electronic recording of fish now. So there are areas which expedite enforcement and streamline that aspect of it. Where the industry is vulnerable is to an individual doing untold biological damage to the stock for his own reward, and that requires individuals to be at the fish markets to see the fish come off the boat. The fishing industry does have its difficulties against the backdrop of tightening and changing European legislation. We intend to move forward to a situation where we have no discards of fish and highly selective gear which will enable biology to grow. Currently the industry is highly dependent on prawns, to a certain extent changing over to scallops, and the pelagic sector, herring and mackerel, is quite buoyant, but it's a very reduced sector. Departments can't put more fish in the sea, but departments have to create a system of rules that enable that biology to progress. That's part of the rule of the Act. Elsewhere that we can help is with grant aid to the sector modernising, seeing value added through processing. We can grant aid that as well. This is simply part of a picture. We do need a firm Act to enable us to keep a system of ground rules.
Yeah, I just want to raise there's a couple of things in the Act that I think will benefit fishermen. I can understand why, if you read them at first sight, maybe you don't appreciate that. One of the things that we want to do is a small technical amendment in the Fisheries Act 1981, Section 30, to allow us to directly enforce EU obligations. Currently, the industry are saying to us on the inshore fisheries side, we want you to bring in regulation for queen scallops, we want you to bring in regulation for brown crabs, we want you to control a number of things on inshore fisheries. But we can't put resources into doing that legislation at the moment because we have to do legislation to enforce EU rules by doing supported legislation, and that has to take priority, because if we don't implement the EU regulations, then we're under threat of infraction from Europe. What Section 30 will do will allow us to, for a lot of our EU regulation, to just enforce it directly and say, EU are telling you you have to stay to a particular area, you just follow the EU legislation as soon as it's made, and that will save us from having to spend time on doing subordinate legislation to enforce EU legislation, which means that resource can then be devoted more to the inshore sector, which is where the industry tell us they want it. The second thing we'll be able to do as a result of that is there's currently a number of regulations on the statute books that we can do away with them. They're not needed anymore, so that will reduce the number of regulations that we have. With regard to the fixed administrative penalties, we already have fixed administrative penalties for enforcement of for EU offences and that, and what it is doing is giving the fisherman the opportunity to take a monetary penalty rather than go to court, possibly be convicted and then possibly getting a criminal record. And what we're talking about in the bill is introducing that also for offences under the EU, under the 1966 Act. And again, that's giving the fisherman, instead of, we found you guilty of a Fisheries Act offence, we're going to take you straight to court, you're going to get a criminal record, we're offering them the opportunity of a fixed administrative penalty. And this is not an easy touch for the department, because we're very clear, and we've said it already as far as the EU offence is concerned, we won't be taking those, we won't be offering somebody a fixed administrative penalty unless we've got sufficient evidence that if the man decides he doesn't want to take the penalty, he can go to court. So it would undermine the thing if we didn't have sufficient evidence. So it's not a shortcut. It's a means of dealing with the offence speedily in a manner that the fisherman appreciates. He can get it out of his way. He doesn't have to worry about it. He pays some money and he carries on fishing. So that is a benefit to the fisherman.
Interesting to see what the stakeholders have to say.
Yeah. Okay. Oliver McGowan. Oliver.
Yes, Chair. Fishing in the marine, well, you say it's pretty limited there, but there is scope for some more. What representation did you make to the proposed marine bill, and as far as fishing in the marine and the zones that have been proposed setting up?
I'd refer to my colleagues that the marine bill predates my existence in fisheries. I know the department did get concessions, did make changes. Do you want to, Paddy?
Well, as far as the marine conservation zones that the DEFRA are proposing, what we have achieved there is that for the ones that are in the Irish Sea, we have got a system set up now where DEFRA and our own local stakeholders are working together to redefine the boundaries and come up with areas that better suit our Northern Ireland fishermen and not the ones that were originally proposed. So that work is ongoing.
Would that not be better doing that first and doing this to see how they agree to that? Especially even the likes of Round Rathlin, where the MCAZs are being set up, and we still allow people to come in and drill on the seabed, but you're not allowed to fish. There is a conflict there.
Well, I think drilling in Rathlin's actually going to be land, possibly. The two things are two separate processes. The Marine Act, the DOE, Marine Bill deals with MCZs. This bill doesn't deal with that.
Where do the local authorities come in?
At this point, they have no statutory role in fisheries, in sea fisheries.
Is that for the designations?
Yeah.
All right.
My understanding is that when, like MCZs, once DOE, and I can't speak for DOE, but my understanding of the process is that once they have sort of come up with these proposed designations, they will then undertake a formal consultation with all stakeholders.
But what planning issues there? So, fish farm, for example.
In terms of the process for fish farming, does the department are responsible? Somebody applies for a licensed fish for a license for fish farming. There are a series of consultations, statutory consultations that we need to go through, and including what can lead to a public appeal or a hearing. For people to make notice of their issues with it, so that's all taken on board in terms of the licensing of fish farms.
Good. And does that include the Crown Estate? Are they answerable to those consultations, those appeals and information gathering?
Again, Kenny,
the Crown Estate, if somebody applies for a fish farm in the marine environment, before we could process an application, we require to have a number of other consents, namely consent in principle from the owner of the seabed, which for most of the coast around Northern Ireland is the Crown Estate.
Who are they answerable to?
In what sense? They own,
In every sense.
they own the Crown, they own the seabed.
Yeah, so if you're out fishing, you're answerable to some authority on shore, i.e. environmental or whatever. Local authorities are answerable, and people are answerable to local authorities. So who is the Crown Estate answerable to? Because they are the people that own the seabed, and those are the people who allow people to set up whatever they want. Now, who are
Well,
they?
they are responsible for administering the Crown Estate. Now, they have,
So they're not answerable to you at all.
in the sense that whenever if the applicant has makes a licence application and he gets the Crown Estate consent in principle, because they don't give formal consent straight away, the applicant must then go and get a consent from the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency that what he is proposing to do won't be a navigational hazard.
Correct,
And
yeah.
once the application's there, and if the department is minded to grant the licence, then it must assess the environmental impact of that proposed development. And the applicant must also, in the case of a fin fish farm, he would also have to apply to DOE for a marine licence. There are several consenting processes that an applicant must go through.
No, you're quite right in all that there. There's a paper trail there. But the question I have, who are the Crown Estate answerable to? They're answerable to nobody. And I think that's a flaw in all of this here. You have one group outside of everything. You talk about the navigational aid. We saw what happened there in Island McGee on the proposed outlet from the sludge into the sea. But the Crown Estate were not involved in anything. We have a group here who are the main drivers of anything in the marine, who are not answerable to anybody. I think that's a flaw.
Mr. Mann, just to build on that point, yeah, the Crown Estate own the seabed. The Crown Estate form, in principle, that is, they agree in principle that they would form a lessee arrangement with a developer, whether it's for a pipeline, the interconnector coming into Island McGee, the brine pipeline going out of Island McGee, or a fish farm. It's the department who make the decision of whether that development would proceed for a fish farm. And it's the department who carry out the consultation and all the examinations of the impact on that fish farm. If the fish farm doesn't progress, the lease with the Crown Estate doesn't progress. So the development process lies in the consent issued by the department.
Yeah.
The lease can't exist without the licence, and the licence can't exist without the lease. But the Crown Estate's rule is a simple lessee arrangement with the person who's going to occupy the ground.
Yeah, but none of that there, the Crown Estate is not answerable to anybody.
No, there isn't a process by which that comes out into the public domain, except if there's a licence required.
That's the point I'm making. You have everybody who is answerable to everybody except the Crown Estate. They're outside of the realms of everybody else. I agree with everything else you say. The point I'm making is the Crown Estate is outside of everything and say they limit. So I think that's a flaw because you don't know what's going on. Thank you. Thank you.
I think what you did say early on is that this gives you the enforcement power over other boats fishing in our waters, also from other jurisdictions, France or elsewhere. Gives you the power of enforcement over those two that you feel are breaking the rules.
Yeah.
Has that ever to be used? Has it ever been used in the past?
Oh, absolutely, yes. Again, Mark's probably best to give examples, but oh, absolutely.
Yeah, foreign vessels have relatively limited access to our waters because they don't have quota, but where they do have quota, they're subject to the same rules.
Yeah.
So yes, I've boarded French trawlers in the past, a couple of Belgians, when we used to have Anglo-Spanish vessels, we boarded those as well. So.
Okay.
Chairman, can I ask a question?
Absolutely, okay. Joe?
Any protection for fishing vessels out at sea that might get entangled with other submarines or obstructions?
I apologise if I refer that again to Mark, who's been very much involved in this issue in the last 48 hours.
I've done little else. There was an incident last Wednesday where an unidentified submarine made contact with a vessel in what was a perilous exercise for the surface craft. And at this stage, the Minister has written to the Secretary of State requesting that she take the matter up with the Minister of Defence. If I take a bit of a run-up here, excuse me, but we had a situation in the late 80s and early 90s where we had the Polaris fleet based at Faslane. We also had the Trafalgar-class hunter-killer submarines based at Faslane. And the United States had a lease arrangement with Holy Loch in the Clyde as well to keep their North Atlantic fleet service there from. So that brought additional submarines to the Clyde, coming in through the Irish Sea or through the North Channel. There was at that stage quite a lot of submarine traffic, and inevitably with a greater focus on coastal fisheries as opposed to distant water fisheries, going right back to the days of Iceland. With fishing vessels coming closer ashore, there was inevitably conflict. Submarines have no detailed rules in relation to their activities below the surface. On the surface, they're not required to display numbers, and for obvious reasons, they are pretty cryptic. A vessel was towed backwards on the Irish Sea, a Portavogie vessel, in 1987, and we formed a liaison group at Faslane, which I attended, and Dick James attended for the industry. And we began to work on a detailed set of rules for these subs when they're passing fishing vessels. Regrettably, in 1990, HMS Trenchant, which is the Trafalgar class, was on exercise in the mouth of the Clyde and sunk a vessel called Antares accidentally and killed 4 people. Subsequent to that, we worked through these detailed rules, and they require, in brief, they're quite long, but they require a submarine travelling deep, which is below periscope depth, which I take to be 26 metres, to surface if it detects a fishing vessel within 4,000 yards. That's 2 nautical miles. So it shouldn't come closer to a fishing vessel than 2 nautical miles when deep. If it's within periscope depth, it should make contact with that fishing vessel to let them know it's there. It should not come closer than 1,500 yards to that vessel while submerged. It must surface. If there's an incident where it makes contact, physical contact with a fishing vessel, it is required to gently power down and stop, make contact with the vessel at periscope depth, and then come to the surface with men, a team to go into the casing to assist the fishing vessel, and importantly, safety of life is paramount, the overriding consideration. Last Wednesday's incident, none of that protocol was observed, so the assumption is that either they didn't abide by the protocol, or they weren't from a nation that abides by the protocol. And it's not just the Royal Navy who abide by the protocol, it's all allied nations. So US, France, Germany, anybody submarine abides by that protocol, and their commanding officer is briefed on that protocol before he's allowed to dive in UK waters. So it's one or other. And the Minister met with fishermen involved last night on the quay at Ardglass, and seems determined to get an explanation on it. So it's unfinished business.
Thanks, Chairman.
Okay, Oliver again. Sorry.
Just very quickly, out of all of that there, is there any system of compensation for these accidental?
Yeah, the Ministry of Defence operates a compensation scheme for approved claims, which would be left with me to forward to the people responsible. In this case, it would be through the flag officer at Faslane. That relates to what we probably consider almost a normal claim for someone retrieving a dummy torpedo or a practice mine or something and damaging their troll gear in the process. For this, which has not been substantiated, who is responsible, it's not clear to me whether MOD would honour such a claim. So that discussion will have to take place.
Okay. I note here that ANF, IPO, FPO responded to the consultation and have some concerns. What about the other fisheries organisation, NIF, FPO? What's their position?
We met them in Port of Bogey in developing the proposals, and that they were aware that we were doing this, and we asked for any thoughts or input they had at the time. Many of their concerns, and Paddy has referred to some of them, were about bringing in new or amending existing regulations made under the 1966 Act and legislation that doesn't require primary legislative change, may require subordinate legislation. We contacted them and offered them an opportunity a number of stakeholders that we've met during the development, and offered them an opportunity to talk to us, assuming that they would be responding, but we got no response or not to do it. Now, we'll take that as that there was nothing particularly difficult in the proposals for them, but you'll have to ask them that yourselves.
One would have thought they would have responded, yeah. No other questions. Well, can you tell me what's the timescale for the introduction of the bill?
We are working to introduction pre-summer, but that is at this stage outside of our hands, and will require a fair bit of work from ourselves, but also the Office of Legislative Counsel, as they recognise that they have a number of competing priorities. We're due to talk tomorrow, and that may give us clearer indication as to whether there's scope or not.
When will the draft bill go to the executive? An idea?
By the middle of June.
June.
Again, that's an indicative working timetable, but as I said, partly outside of our gift at this stage. But we'll do what we can, and hopefully that others will be able to help us. As I know better tomorrow after we meet council.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Fisheries removed.
Members, I'm sure will have noted that large parts of the bill deal with fisheries issues falling to the CAL Committee remit, and I suggest that I meet with the CAL Committee Chair to discuss how we handle the overlap. Okay, members? Okay. Agenda item 6, oral briefing from DARD, Rural Development Programme 2014-2020. Referring members to the memo from the clerk at pages 99 to 106, and papers from the department at pages 107 to 166. And he also asked members to note that there is a web-based link to the RDP provided on your papers at page 99. Committee staff have also provided one hard copy if any member wishes to see in paper form. And I welcome Colette McMaster, Assistant Secretary, Lorraine Linus, Principal Officer, Ben Irvine, Principal Officer, and Gareth Evans, Principal Officer. Forgive me, I'm hoarse today, so I've took drinks of water and I'll help you up with that much better. We'll give you up to 10 minutes to make your presentation, and then we'll ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members, for the opportunity to provide you with a further update briefing on the approval of the 2014 to 2020 Rural Development Programme. Lorraine Linus, who's with me, is leading on developing the new programme. Brian Irvine is from Environmental Policy Branch, and Gareth Evans from Rural Development Division. Officials last briefed the committee on the development of the RDP on the 14th of October, which was the same day the draft programme was formally submitted to the European Commission. The Commission have a requirement to respond within 3 months, setting out their observations on the submitted programme, which means we were expecting a reply by mid-January. However, their observation letter on the draft programme was received formally by DARD on the 31st of March. The Commission's letter makes a total of 315 observations or recommendations on the draft Rural Development Programme. The document that we've provided to the committee summarises the key points from the observations letter, and many of the observations are minor and technical in nature, and these have not been reproduced in the summary. The committee also has a copy of the full observation letter and the web link to the version of the programme that was submitted to the Commission in October. There are a number of issues in the observations letter which I'd like to highlight to the committee. Firstly, on areas of natural constraint. The observations letter refers to the method used for the calculation of income forgone and additional costs for the exclusion of the disadvantaged area, and asks for this to be detailed in the measure sheet. This issue was discussed with the Commission prior to receiving the observation letter, and we consider that this has now been addressed. The necessary calculations will be included in the measure sheet, and we will seek to confirm this through the formal negotiations with the Commission. As the committee will be aware, the Department is seeking applications at risk to the 2016 ANC scheme by the 15th of May as part of the single application form process. In the absence of formal Commission approval, it has been made clear in the scheme guidance that the scheme remains subject to Commission approval, and in the event that the Commission does not approve the scheme, any application made on the SAF may become void with no payment being made. Similarly, if changes to the scheme are required, applicants will be notified accordingly. However, the Department does not foresee any difficulties at this stage. The next key point relates to the environment and climate change. The observation letter places a very strong emphasis on the programme's environment and climate change objectives, which are a key priority for the Commission. The Commission has requested considerably more detail on the agri-environment climate measures across the draft RDP, including more information on the environmental pressures arising from agriculture. It also asks for further detail on how the proposed interventions target identified needs and link to EU and national policies on the environment. In relation to the cross-cutting climate change objective, the Commission has requested more information on how mitigation and adaptation measures have been selected and targeted at particular sectors and themes. Specific performance indicators for climate change are also highlighted, which are being considered as part of the ongoing development of the RDP performance framework. Further baseline information is required for each measure in relation to cross-compliance and the minimum requirements needed to implement the Nitrates Directive, the Water Framework Directive and the Pesticides Directive. For agri-environment climate commitments, which are similar to greening obligations, the Commission requires additional information on how double funding will be excluded. The Commission has asked that environmental farming scheme costs are included within the RDP. The draft AFS costs, along with the forestry scheme costs, are currently with DFP for verification, and it's hoped these will be available for the resubmission of the programme. We intend to seek clarification from the Commission in relation to its comments on the proposed land management programme. It's expected this proposed scheme will require negotiation with the Commission to ensure it can be programmed within the RDP in a manner that's acceptable to DARD. Given the focus on environment and climate change within the observations letter and the cross-cutting nature of this area across the RDP, significant input will be required in the weeks ahead from the policy and delivery officials working in this area. A further issue highlighted in the observations letter is the lack of support for organic farming in the draft programme. Two types of financial support for organic farming can be provided through RDPs. Firstly, funding for conversion to organic farming methods, and secondly, maintenance payments for those already farming to certified organic standards. DARD's public consultation on the draft RDP proposed that the next programme would not include a scheme to fund conversion to organic production methods. This was a position that was shared by the majority of members on the RDP stakeholder consultation group. This proposal was based on the fact that uptake for the organic farming conversion scheme in the current RDP has been limited, with only 37 farmers participating. An annual organic maintenance payment as part of the environmental farming scheme was considered. It was subsequently determined that such a payment would not obtain business case approval, as additionality could not be demonstrated. And this is because organic farmers would be receiving payment for actions that they are already carrying out. The Commission's observation is that the RDP does not include a single specific measure to support organic farming, although the land area under organic management in Northern Ireland is well below the EU average. The letter refers to the Commission's action plan on organic farming, which recommends Member States should use the opportunities and tools to support organic farming through their rural development programmes. The Commission therefore asks DARD to reconsider the decision not to support organic farming. Following previous representations from organic farming representatives, DARD has already committed to reviewing the support that it may be able to offer specifically to the organic sector. DARD will take the Commission's views into account as part of this review process. Moving now to LEADER. The observations letter has highlighted the programming of LEADER to implement particular measures, namely business support, basic services and village renewal. The Commission has commented that the approach undertaken in the current programming period, which restricted LEADER delivery to certain measures, is no longer applicable in the new programming period. It's also said that the way we've currently programmed LEADER in the draft programme does not fulfil the bottom-up approach of identifying local needs and ways to address them. The Commission has commented that the LEADER measure in the new programme should instead be designed in a way to offer the LAGs a broad scope of action, and we should not specify the eligible activities. The letter recommends that Member States can target support under LEADER by defining appropriate eligibility conditions and eligible costs to ensure the measure contributes to the strategic objectives set for LEADER. There should also be sufficient scope for local action groups to add additional conditions in their local development strategies, which should be the main basis for the selection of projects. To address this observation, officials are currently drafting a strategic design principles paper, which will set out the themes that DARD will provide to LEADER groups as the framework for their areas for intervention, the overall aims for each, and the broad design principles within which LAGs can select and design schemes to meet the identified local needs. We propose to include this approach in the redrafted programme to address the Commission's recommendations on LEADER. We aim to complete our negotiations on LEADER by the end of April, to allow the guidance to LAGs to issue as soon as possible thereafter, so that local strategies can be developed and agreed quickly by the LAGs and councils. Finally, the Commission has commented on the proposed measure for on-farm capital investment, which will be a significant part of the proposed farm business improvement scheme. The Commission's main recommendation is that there needs to be a targeting approach based on the evidence from the needs assessment and SWOT. It's suggested that this targeting could be done according to size, competitiveness challenges for certain agricultural sectors or geographically. On this aspect, we hope that the data gathered in the recent Whole Farm Needs Assessment Survey will help to inform the EU RDP approval process and any targeting of the capital investment scheme. The Commission also recommends that we make a reference to the potential impacts of capital investment on biodiversity and ecosystems, and where appropriate, the need for mitigation in sensitive areas such as Natura 2000. The Commission are encouraging the use of selection principles to ensure the most environmentally or climate-friendly investments are favoured. It also asks us to explain how we will ensure that any negative side effects of investment on the environment are assessed and mitigated. The Commission has made only minor comments on the other schemes that would be part of the proposed farm business improvement scheme. So the next steps then, we've started now the formal adoption process with the aim of having our programme approved as soon as possible and ideally before the summer. We're also working on the necessary business cases and the design of the scheme in order to open the schemes as soon as possible once the EU and business case approvals are in place. That's all I want to say at this point. Thank you. We're happy to answer any questions or provide further clarification.
Thank you very much for your presentation. 315 observations seems quite a lot, but as a department, is any of those that you will see difficulty with, that you'll have difficulty addressing?
Well, we're currently working through all those comments and making the necessary changes to the text. There's a number of comments where we'll need further clarification from the Commission as what they actually mean by their comments. And in some cases, we will need to negotiate with the Commission on the level of the detail that they're looking for. So far, we've had 4 video conferences with the Commission to discuss the observation letter, and we'll continue with that interaction with the Commission as we work through the comments that they have given us. We're actually intending to send back each section of the programme as we have it redrafted. and we've sort of got a plan to ensure that we're maintaining a steady flow of information to the Commission on all of this. We have already had some video conferences. We've further video conference, I believe, tomorrow, and then more lined up after that. At this stage, I'm not aware that we've come across particular obstacles. There are a lot of comments there in some of the areas, and I've highlighted some of the main issues in the opening statement. Just invite maybe Lorraine if she comment on any.
Just to say that I know 315 seems like a lot, but the guidance that we've had, or the feedback we've had from the Commission, that Member States' programmes have been in the region of 300 to 800 comments. So Northern Ireland's programme is actually at the lower end of that scale. I would also say there is a lot of duplication in the comments, which is why originally we tried to provide a summary, because we've found as we're going through them that you're answering something and you find the same comment again. You also can get one comment that's repeated 10 times for each measure. So some are easy to fix and some are a little bit more difficult to fix. And I think maybe the main issue is more the time involved and particularly on the agri-environment side, to get through the negotiations on the level of detail that they're requiring for each of the options within the programme.
Yeah. Do you see this in any way holding up the approval of the RDP from Europe? Will this push back the approval?
Yeah, it'll really depend how quickly we can do this and how quickly. I mean, we have, as I've highlighted in the opening comments, there will be a lot of work involved in this, especially for the officials in policy and delivery work who are working on the environmental and climate change areas. But we're aware of that, and we've developed a plan to actually be able to work on that as closely as possible with the Commission. We're still aiming to work towards getting approval of the programme, ideally before the summer. I suppose we will need to see how the negotiations on some of the points that do need negotiated do go, and how those progress over the next while. But at this stage, certainly, we're putting the resource towards working within that time frame.
Okay. Tom again.
Yeah, given the financial pressures facing the department, do you think this will have any impact on staffing, resources and their ability to deliver the programme?
On the approval process itself, well, we have the policy and delivery teams in place who have worked on the draft programme to date, and it's very much those particular staff with that expertise who'll be continuing to work with the Commission as we negotiate this phase of the programme to achieve approval. There is a lot of work there, and I think, as Lorraine highlighted, it's very much about the time frame within which to do that work, because we are seeking to achieve that in quite a tight time frame now, given that we've just got the comments on the 31st of March, but we are hoping to have that turnaround and approval of the programme ideally before the summer. So it is challenging, but that's what we're aiming to work towards. So at this stage, the plan is there, and we'll continue to monitor closely how that goes. What we have said in the business plan for this year is that we aim to have the programme approval by September at the latest. So while we are working towards getting Commission approval ideally before the summer, we are certainly hoping at the worst case scenario that we'll have that approval by September.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Edwin,
Thank you. There's a comment there on the young farmers. What observations would you make on what you're saying with that?
Lillian.
Paragraph 116.
Yeah, the young farmers issue within the programme, and it probably cuts across to Pillar 1 as well. The definition of a young farmer is defined in the Rural Development Regulation as a young person who is no more than 40 years of age at the moment of submitting the application, possesses adequate occupational skills and competence, and is setting up for the first time in agricultural holding. There's a further definition within the RDP which relates only to the capital investment measure, where you can allow an additional 20% for young farmers who have become head of holding within the last 5 years. and that's a slight difference. And that was introduced in the final stages of the negotiations in June 2013, and this provided a welcome flexibility, because if the original definition had been there, only farmers who were becoming head of holding would have been able to access the additional grant. And we did lobby very hard throughout the negotiations, both through DEFRA and the MEPs, for more flexibility. The definitions are defined in the Basic Act, and DARD cannot change them.
Yep.
Comment in there is in relation to us clarifying our support. Although you can give up to an extra 20%, the DARD draft programme is recommending only 10% additional. That's to enable us not to proceed beyond the 50% or pound for pound of funding. So they probably are seeking clarification of why we're only going for the 10% and not the 20%.
Okay, so if someone had became head of holding an active farmer in 2011, they'd qualify?
It is at the point of application, so the key here is when we actually open the scheme. So what you might find is that if there's different tranches of schemes throughout the programme, a young farmer may be eligible for one tranche but not be eligible for another tranche, because he may have fallen out the 5 years depending on the point of application, and that's in the Basic Act. So that's a key point to remember.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. In the old program, DARD observed 73% of the program budget. Okay. In the new program, the proposal, and I think it's touched on, that DARD will take up to they've left an allocation of 37.2 million to deliver the program. Has this situation changed? Is DARD still proposing to need 37.2 million to have a budget to run the programme costs?
Is that around the technical assistance issue? I think maybe just to ask Lorraine if she'd like to talk on this one.
Yeah, the technical assistance, we did maximise technical assistance in the current programme as well. The rules around technical assistance are that you can only use up to 4% of the EU funds on technical assistance, and that would mean of the EU element that's there, the EU element would only be 7 million. But the way we set the co-financing rates, the associated national that will come with that, it's only a 20% co-financing rate on the technical assistance measure. The fact is that we've had to look very closely at, this is a much bigger programme that we had previously. It has a large capital investment scheme in it that could be quite costly in terms of staff needed to deliver that. And we're still finalising or looking at the delivery options within the programme. So the technical assistance element is there to assist. It may not be specifically, it can be used to assist in getting inspections carried out in terms of the technical inspections that you may need for building works, from surveyors, from architects and so on. There's a whole range of activities that can be used.
So it's a nominal, at this moment in time, it's not actually set in stone, it's a nominal?
No, it's not set in stone. Those are set there, and technical assistance is there to enable us to manage and deliver the programme. For example, some of the technical assistance costs will be running the rural network. Some are the costs associated with the monitoring committee. Some are the costs that we have, the SLA, for example, with NISRA, in looking after the evaluation. So there are key parts that we need. But we have to look critically at how to use that most effectively going forward, and that's a process we'll discuss with the Commission. DARD will still absorb the majority of the delivery costs within the programme. That will still only be a fraction of what's needed to deliver this programme.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions, members? Okay. Thank you very much again for your presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's Sunday. And item 7, correspondence. And refer members to the correspondence received at pages 155 to 168. Can I ask members to take a look at the second piece of correspondence from your counterpart committee in the Republic of Ireland on page 158? This is that committee's report into volatility of the dairy industry. The recommendations are on page 165. I find the second recommendation on better before bigger very interesting, and certainly it's quite apt. Members content action. The rest of the correspondence is suggested on the index sheet at pages 153 to 154. Agenda item 8, forward work programme. Can refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 170 to 171. Members will recall that it was agreed at last week's meeting to consider a visit to Brussels in June prior to the finalisation of the RDP. The travel options and costs are outlined in the memo, and costs are based on 5 members attending along with 2 members of staff. As is the case for previous visits, it would be appropriate for at least 1 member per party to take part in the visit. Staff have contacted the Commissioner Office to see when he will be in Brussels and available to meet with us. Can I seek an indication from members who would be willing or intending to go on a visit to Brussels?
Chairman, at the outset, can I fundamentally disagree with the principle that's being established here?
Okay.
The Agriculture Committee. That should be for the Agriculture Committee, not for 1 member from each party. And discriminates very badly against the larger parties.
It's at least 1 member.
Yes, but if
Yeah, at least
5 parties here, so
I don't.
1 from each party takes it up. That's 1 member from each party. So
Sorry, it really wasn't meant to be. It was at least, because last time we didn't get 1 member from every party. So I think that was what the point we were trying to make, rather than
At least 1 member from each party. We wouldn't go over those in 1 member from each party.
well, that's a nonsense as well.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
If people don't want to attend, you know, there's only 1 member from the SDLP, for example, and 1 member from the Alliance. It may not suit them. So if the visit is worthwhile, if 1 of those members are not available to go, then you don't go.
Okay.
That's a nonsense as well. It should be for the committee and left at that there. And
I will say this, Edwin, if there's only 1 member going to go or 2, it wouldn't do either. I think we need to have some members to go. Not
course,
right.
yes.
So, yes, I think that's what it's meant by
but I object strongly to the principle that you start this caper about 1 member from each party. Because,
at least 1 member, it says here.
yes, because we have 38 members in the Assembly.
Yeah.
The Alliance Party, I think, has 8. So that is what the
But
public
at least
like.
1 member doesn't say that before.
Sure.
It says here, I read out at least 1 member.
Yes.
So there's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't say the
And
4 can't go.
is it a maximum of 5 or a minimum of 5?
No, it was just the costs are based on what happened last time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last time there was 5 members who attended. It wasn't that we're saying only 5 members should attend this time. I was just giving you the costs of how much, you know, of the last visit where 5 members attended.
So there's absolutely no problem if anybody wants to go.
Well, I don't think, again, there's... If you've only 1 member, if you've 2 parties here and there's only 1 member represented, that should not direct what the committee does if those members are not available to attend.
That's grand. If 11 members want to go, 11 members want to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine, no
I
problem.
may not want to go very well.
No, but according to where it is, according to a lot of things.
No, but it's a principle that...
We have contacted Commissioner Hogan office, but he hasn't got back to us yet. We need to wait to see when he's there. There's no point going if we can't meet him. But we're trying to get a feel
I did.
for how many members would like to go.
Well, yeah, can we get an indication from members what they feel on the issue?
We need to see the programme first.
Well, I'll go. All right.
What were the dates, Chair? Remind me.
We're trying to find Commissioner Hogan when he's available first.
All right. Okay.
Because obviously, as we want to go and see.
No point going if
We
you're not
would
going to
like
meet
to
the right
see, I
people.
mean, all we're suggesting at the minute is Commissioner Hogan. Hopefully we'll see the 3 MEPs. And the other things that we'd like to see are perhaps things around the committee have already decided their next review would be better regulation. So go and see the EU about better regulation and also dairy markets. So that's 4 things that we've suggested at the minute, but we haven't finalised anything. It all depends on when Commissioner Hogan's free, really.
We'll intend to meet there, probably our Northern Ireland MEPs when we are there as well, if that was possible. Okay. Stella, you'll come back to us on that issue?
Well, I just needed a rough indication that we think we're going to have.
Yes.
I'd be happy to go for the dates and times, certainly.
Edwin,
3,
all been well?
4.
I'll see what the programme is. Whether it's a while going or not.
Oh.
Put the pressure on Stella, like,
Yeah, I can, yeah.
if she delivers, yeah.
And I'm sure there will be. There's a couple of parties not represented at the moment, so.
So that's all,
um,
go by 4 or 5. That's
I think look into it and take it from there.
Yeah, as soon as we get dates, we'll come back to you on that, okay?
Okay. Can I refer members to the Forward Work Programme at pages 172 to 177. And advise members that the joint meeting with the EDI Committee to receive an oral briefing on Going for Growth has been arranged for Tuesday the 9th of June from 12 to 2 in the Senate chamber. The regular committee meeting will follow directly after this on that date. Any other business? Joe Byrne wanted to mention an issue, and I know what it's about, but
Speak up.
he's not here. He did early on and was able to wait to any other business. I think it's in relation to the programme, and I did not see it on the poppy farms or on the issue. Did anyone see that programme?
Yeah.
No, I didn't see it. Of course. Should we go into close session? No.
Do you want to see what Oliver's issue is first? And
Oliver, have you an issue? Yes,
It's just, as was raised today already, I think it would be important that this committee writes a letter to the Secretary of State expressing our how would you call it, our concern for the fishing industry as to what happened to that boat when it's got its net snagged in a submarine. Those men are in work one of the most dangerous jobs you can have, and this is not needed at all. And I think we should be expressing our solidarity with the fishermen and also expressing our concern as to what happened, and there needs to be a full explanation for it. For we certainly don't want to see this happen again. Only for the quick action of three crewmen, that boat would have sunk, and we'd have been looking at a tragedy. Thank God it was averted, so I think we should be writing to the Secretary of State expressing our concerns on what happened.
Great.
Great.
Yeah, great. I mean, certainly there was a human life that could have been.
Yeah, and this could be a submarine from anywhere, to Russia or anywhere. No one knows at this stage. I think it's.
Was it confirmed?
No, I don't think it was confirmed. I'm not sure. Maybe anyone else.
Well, we can write the letter in such a way that we can outline our concerns at the incident and asking for full investigation from MOT.
Is it okay? And that keeps.
Against the waters.
Okay.
Certainly our sympathies with the fishermen.
Yep.
There is an issue for Europe, but in new country of origin labelling. It is an issue now for lambs. 50% of our lambs are sold and slaughtered in the Republic, and it has created a problem whereby lambs have fell in price this last few weeks. I've been speaking to a number in the industry on this, and it's maybe quite difficult. Some feel that if one particular felt that if our lamb was identified as Northern Ireland lamb, that would overcome that issue. So not so sure. Are you aware of it, Edmund?
No, but no lambs fell, but that'll be a difficult one to sort out.
It could be quite difficult, yeah.
We should invite the industry up here to give us a talk on their industry, because it's the sheep section is one of the lesser ones of the farming industry that we see in here. I think we've only had them in once.
I think I don't say that. I don't think it's an issue that's going to be easily resolved now.
No, but we're hitting nearly the same thing as
the nomads,
nomadic sheep now and nomadic cattle.
It's a labelling issue.
Well, sheep are nomadic species to begin with.
The big difficulty for Northern Ireland is 50% or more of all the lambs were killed in the Republic.
Yeah.
If it was only 10% or 15%, it mightn't be so bad.
They'll kill the marts too.
Well, I had an auctioneer under me actually on Thursday last. So I had very irate about it now, and I was very concerned.
The industry's a new chairman, Mr. Morrow.
Maybe we should speak to someone.
Mr. Blaney and Mr. Morrow, and ask them.
Someone from the Sheep Association, or see what their feelings on it is.
The man Morrow was just got elected, I think, as the chair.
Should we,
Him and John Blaney.
I have sent a letter to the Minister, but that maybe should the committee be, send something to the committee of the concerns? It is a major concern now.
Yep, why not?
It may take some time to,
Certainly send a letter to the Minister, certainly. But get the interest up here and talk to
isn't
them.
that the committee has raised the issue and has concerns about the issue?
And do you want to raise, does anybody want to raise the issue on the TV programme, or do you want to take that for,
When you get a job.
on the puppy farm?
I mean, want to raise the issue on the, I think our Vice Chair wanted to raise the issue on the Puppy Farms programme. I did not see it in the programme myself. I did get a phone call from the owner who said that he felt very aggrieved that, of course, TV programmes can blow things out of all proportion and put slants and things. We're all fully aware of that. I haven't seen the programme, so I don't know exactly what was.
Send a letter of concerns to the Minister.
Concerns in what regard? I mean,
the
Concerns of the issues
programme.
raised in the Spotlight programme?
That's all you can do, really, because
yeah, but the issue sometimes, as we are all aware,
there was a photograph in the paper of members of this committee at the
yeah,
itself.
that's right. And who were
They were,
The past chair and Joanne.
and who else? Somebody else?
Joanne.
There's more?
Joe Byrne.
Joe Byrne, there's 3, yeah. Okay. But I mean, that was an investigation the committee had been doing, isn't that right? So it was all above board, that was, you know what I mean? Like the so-called puppy farms and
I
the
think
rest of
it wouldn't do any harm a letter being sent off just on the concerns of the watching of the public.
Yeah, no
Ourselves.
problem.
Well, I'm not so sure from what angle Joe was going at here, so because he was one of the members there, so should we wait? Do we have him here?
Yep.
I'd like Joe. You know, Joe was the one who wanted to raise this issue, so maybe we'll hold to it.
There will not be
You know
anything then.
Will not be.
What was, I didn't see the programme, but was the district councils involved and was everything or anything being done within the legislation that I picked up somewhere along the line? Was that the case?
Well, I think that,
I didn't see. Did you see it?
perhaps,
I know.
yeah, perhaps you want the letter to ask the Minister that, considering the issues raised in the Spotlight programme, is she considering any action, legislative or otherwise, perhaps? Yeah.
So it's really broad brush.
I think the Minister
Maybe.
did put out a statement on that issue.
Here's Joe back. We're stay with the bell. We're just waiting on your issue to be raised.
Your ears will be burning.
Discuss it. Huh?
His ears will be burning.
It was in around the puppy farm and the Spotlight programme, isn't that right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Chairman.
go on ahead.
Well, obviously there's been a concern. I've had some written communication from people about the disturbance that the annoyance people have experienced watching the programme. I think it's fair to say that way back some years ago we did go on 2 visits to puppy farms, and I think it's fair to say we were all a bit concerned about the volume of puppy production that was going on, a wide bit of socialisation, handicaps for dogs. I think the programme has reawakened people's conscience or concern.
Yeah, I didn't see the programme, but sometimes I'm aware that sometimes programmes can
It's sensational.
be very sensational, and that's why I haven't seen it, so I didn't. Not fully aware of it. We were thinking of writing a letter to the Minister. What did we? Someone else want to?
Thanks, Chair. Maybe it's a good idea to ask officials to come in and explain, the position as regards the department, that a proper procedure was followed or whatever, because Spotlight might say there that there's a whole lot of stuff there, rules broke, right? But we need to hear from officials here to say there, that everything has been up and above board or otherwise. No?
Chairman,
You're the man who wanted to raise this, so I asked why you want to give you.
I'd be happy to write to the Minister, and I think we also need some reassurance that there is proper monitoring on the establishment. There is concern. The Chief Executive of Fermanagh Council did give a report to the Council on the night of the programme, giving an assurance that all was well in these establishments. And been properly observed, managed and monitored. And it's raised serious questions affecting children in the home area. Thanks, John.
Leave him egg on his face, does it? No. Yeah, I didn't see the programme.
Doesn't need to do.
Right, okay.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Agenda item 10, date and time of next meeting. Can I remind members that there will be no meeting of the committee next week due to the consultation stage of the Reservoirs Bill. The next meeting of the Agriculture Committee for Agriculture and Rural Development will take place on Tuesday, believe it or not, the 12th of May, 2015 at 1:30 p.m. Room 30, Parliament Buildings. I declare the meeting adjourned. So, is that 2 days before the show then, is it?